Well, you're here at CenterStage, Mumbai, at W.media's Mumbai CDC. And joining me today is Joerg Desler, Global Director, Technology, Stulz Group. Joerg, before we begin, why don't you tell us a little bit about your own professional journey as a technology professional? How did you find your way into Stulz Group? And how did you find your way into liquid cooling technology?
I can do that. Deborah, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. Yeah, I'm with Stulz for quite some time. I would say more than 30 years it is. I have had multiple positions, and I was responsible for our US operation since the end of 2023, and then I took on a more global role as the Director of Technology for the Stulz Group. We are a privately held organization. We have multiple subsidiaries all over the world, so we have a global footprint. The question about liquid cooling, I'm personally involved in liquid cooling solutions and technology and ideas since 2016. And I have to say I'm a strong believer of liquid cooling. I was always a strong believer. I always thought that this is the way to go. And it will solve a lot of problems that we saw developing with increasing heat loads. And to be honest, I'm very surprised that it took so long to really taking on and becoming a major player in our industry.
Speaking of taking too long, it's also taken it a while to come to India. But can you tell us now how your organization plans to play a role in developing India's digital infrastructure landscape, specifically when it comes to liquid cooling?
So I have to say I'm based in the US. Right? I moved to the US in 2001, and it was meant to be for only 2 years, and I'm still there. So I watched very closely how the market developed in the US, and it developed very fast. All of a sudden, liquid cooling was the main topic, and we all know that the AI boom is the driving factor for this type of technology to really take off. But I have to say that looking at other markets, for example Europe, in my role I'm monitoring every market in the world, and also the APAC market, everybody was kind of very conservative and had a lot of concerns about liquid cooling to really apply it. And I think it was driven by what happened in the US. There were a couple of hyperscalers moving very fast with deploying this type of solution, and they ran into a couple of issues. So I may have to say that being second in this market might be a smart move. So far we have not seen a lot of development in Europe, but I'm surprised here in India, and I'm right now visiting our subsidiary here. There's a boom. All of a sudden everybody is talking about liquid cooling. So it looks like that some of the major players out of the US coming over here now and want to deploy similar solutions as they do in the US in a little bit different fashion, because we see a lot of co-location companies are now asking us to provide solutions. So looking at that, maybe India is the next big hub for liquid cooling solutions.
India certainly is bullish on liquid cooling. Let me give you an example. When we were planning the agenda for CenterStage, we originally planned to have just one discussion on liquid cooling. But people are so passionate about it, and there's so many people who have so much to say, so much to ask. We ended up with 3 different sessions on liquid cooling. And now this discussion as well. So liquid cooling is, the hot topic here in India. Okay. Since you said that data centers are showing enthusiasm towards liquid cooling, I was wondering how easy or difficult it would be for present brownfield air-cooled data centers to adapt to liquid cooling.
So I have thought about that quite a bit, how liquid cooling could be introduced in existing data center space. And it's an ongoing discussion since a couple of years, if that is even possible. And I personally have to say, as a cooling solution provider, it depends on the existing infrastructure. So I have seen a couple of requests where companies simply wanted to have higher density solutions in order to provide some AI workloads. And the question was, can I get it in a brownfield data center? I have a mixed deployment within my data center. I have traditional air cooling, and I want to have a section that I want to equip with higher density. The answer to it, is yes, it can be done. But of course, it is all driven by the existing infrastructure, mainly the chilled water supply, and then of course the power. But we have seen some requests coming our way, and we have prepared ideas and solutions how this could be done. So the short answer, it can be done, but it will require some engineering effort to really study the existing infrastructure, and it is also depending on what kind of workload you want to deploy.
Well, since this conversation is anyway now going to turn towards hybrid cooling, because we can't just switch overnight, there's going to be a transition of sorts. I was wondering, when it comes to implementing designs for hybrid cooling, are they being utilized to their full potential?
That kind of goes back to the previous question about brownfield, because that is also driving a little bit the hybrid, right? The hybrid solution between liquid and air cooling. If we want to separate this to take a look at how much is going into liquid and how much is going into air, we have seen very clear separations, and a good number is an 80-20 rule. So meaning that 80% of the load goes directly into liquid, 20% is still air cooling. There are different approaches that we also have seen. I have a data center design for straight air. I bring in my liquid cooling, and in order to handle the requirements for the residual air cooling, a rear door heat exchanger, for example, is a solution that we have seen quite often as the way out to isolate the higher density liquid cooling part from the rest of the data center, so that you have kind of a neutral implementation in a mixed environment.
But we would also have to change the way we are doing things completely, whether it is our project delivery ecosystem, the supply chain models. Everything is currently geared towards serving traditional air cooling needs in data centers. So if we want to truly embrace liquid cooling technologies and systems, how does all of this need to change, in your opinion?
So when it comes to the supply chain, I have to say that we are, how do I phrase this, way more limited in our decisions, because the entire liquid cooling is very much driven by the heat load itself, by the source of the heat. Looking at, for example, companies like NVIDIA that have very, very clear understanding how a deployment has to be, they go so far that they dictate kind of the components that go into, for example, CDUs or in the secondary pipe network. With that, I think our limitations are increasing, and that could have a significant impact to the supply chain.
What would you say are some of the medium to long-term risks from the supply chain of coolants if only one or two coolants are approved?
Goes back to what I said previously. We are being driven by the hyperscalers, by the chip manufacturers, to go to a certain type of component. And I would see this is for sure the risk. So the manufacturers that are out there, they need to get approved. So it is something that is new to what we're doing previously. We are a company providing air conditioning equipment. That's how we started. We designed the equipment. But we have slowly seen more and more a demand driven by our customers, where hyperscalers or large co-location companies dictating us how the units have to be designed, and in many cases also going down to the component level. Now with the liquid cooling and the risk that is tied to this type of technology, and I think of course due to the failure that we have seen by fast deployments, the companies that are responsible for the heat load, like the NVIDIAs, the AMDs, they are dictating us to use certain components, which again will drive supply chain to be adjusted to meet their demands. We are going down to a component level of certification and approval driven by the IT companies.
Perfect. Now, there are a lot of innovations happening in liquid cooling across the world, because you have an eye on multiple markets. when it comes to these cooling technologies, what are some of these innovations and international best practices that you find most exciting? And do you think some of that can be brought here to India?
Yes, I think of course. We need to take a look at what is done everywhere in the world. And again, previously I also said that I believe most markets outside of the US were a little bit waiting for how is the deployment going there, how many challenges, issues, problems are coming up and how are they being resolved. So it goes to me back to taking a look, and that's what we have done as a company, and I think other companies do the same thing. We have analyzed what is currently available in the market, what is good, what is bad, and we apply these technologies to our products. If we take a look, for example, in the secondary pipe network, when the whole liquid cooling thing started, we were looking at filtration levels around about 500 micron, then we went down to a 200, 150, and now we're talking about 25 micron as a filtration process within our units. So that of course is a challenge, and it requires to think about how can I implement these type of requirements to minimize the pressure drops that would cause. It all goes back to the discussion about energy efficiency that these units bring. With me being a believer in liquid cooling, I always thought when liquid cooling comes into play that we would eliminate the need for a lot of mechanical cooling due to higher levels of water temperatures. What we're seeing right now is that the water temperatures are going down. If I'm talking to companies like NVIDIA, they say 45-degree water as an entering medium temperature is satisfying their needs. That is not what we are seeing from the requests we're getting. We are talking about 26, we may talk about 30 degrees water. So that also has an impact to the efficiency that liquid cooling can provide. And I think also it is not utilized to its full potential. So that's where I see also future innovation that could potentially come up by us as a provider of cooling solution, working very closely with the provider of the IT to optimize the performance that can be achieved with liquid cooling. So in other words, I think there is a lot more to happen in the years to come, and it goes back to a statement that was made earlier. Whatever we do today, it's no longer good for years to come, it's good for months to come. And in 6 months, we can see a drastic change in requirements and technology. So we as a company, or the companies in general that are in this market, we need to be able to adapt to these changing markets very fast.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Final question. You participated here in Mumbai CDC today. I hope you got to meet some potential clients, you got to network. What was your experience like?
The networking, of course, is the part, but to me it is also very important to learn requirements that are maybe different in this market versus other markets that I'm involved with. And I already have learned a couple of things here where, for example, we are being now asked not only to provide components like a CDU, we are being asked to provide an entire solution. And I think this is new, meaning the solution, meaning that we have to provide the CDU, that we have to provide the secondary fluid network, that we have to provide the installations, the service, the testing. So this goes far beyond what we as a component and equipment provider for cooling has done in the past. But I totally understand it because it's logical to me. In the past we were providing an air handling unit that delivered cooled air to chill an IT equipment. Today, if we are looking at a CDU as a component, it's not going to do anything. It is only serving the purpose if it is a complete solution. So this is something that we as a provider have to get adapted to, and we need to implement also ideas, technology, and engineering efforts that are far beyond of what we have seen so far.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was an exciting fireside chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.